Well, thank you for being here and for being present. My name is Erica Schroeder-Surt. I'm with LivWell Seniors, and we are really grateful and honored to be able to present today here at the Quartet to talk about some next steps and reasons why you might need a plan. So tonight, we're just going to be doing some brief overview and going over some of the reasons that we might want to consider making that transition. Some of these topics might be how to start the conversation with a loved one. So sometimes it's difficult to have that conversation with a loved one and know where to tread, lightly sometimes with those things. But we can help you start to have those discussions. And also to take a look at reasons why we'd want to take a look at researching your options before it gets to be urgent and things are needed quickly. And so it's much easier to gather information when it's not urgent. And so those are some of the things we'll get into, and then we'll talk about the different types of senior living, because they're not all cookie cutter. Every place offers something a little different and a little bit unique. So those are the things we'll be discussing today. So first we'll get into some of the reasons why it might be time to consider, or just some things to consider overall. So for living at home, this transition could be a maintenance-free lifestyle. So for myself as a homeowner, there's a lot going on that you need to maintain with your home. So some of those things, the home upkeep, some of those things that need a lot of attention that you definitely have to hire out to do, because I'm not equipped. I'm not a jack of all trades in that department. So it's definitely can be difficult to try to find somebody to contract that work and have that person be reliable and trustworthy. So that's one of the reasons. As we approach this cooler weather, here we are looking at some cooler weather here, and this might be another reason to consider. It's not fun to winter at home. You can't get out as often to be social. It's more difficult, especially if you've got the climate and the snow and the ice to contend with. And so those are the things you have to consider when you're keeping that upkeep with your home as well, and the sidewalks clear and keeping it safe. Some homes have stairs that lead to the upstairs where people are used to having their bedrooms, or the laundry is located downstairs. And so in those types of circumstances, it's sometimes, really mindful to be looking at those kinds of things and considering if the home is really sufficient to meet your needs as you age. And back to the need for socialization, there's challenges when you are staying at home, and sometimes it becomes really challenging to navigate that while you're trying to also fit those needs for socialization. So having that, I had someone describe that, I don't want to become a prisoner in my own home. And sometimes that's what it can look like, and you don't want it to get to that point. So as human beings, I believe we're wired for connection. And it's really challenging to even if you're not a social person per se, when you're at home and you don't have anyone else to talk to, it can be challenging to meet those needs. If you are a spouse and you're providing that care for your loved one, it can be extremely taxing on yourself, mentally and physically, to be the spouse that's taking care of the spouse that has needs. So you've got some caregiver burnout to consider. And there's also nutrition concerns. It is not easy to cook, for one or two people. You need to prep, you need to buy the groceries, prep, actually stand there and cook, and then also the cleanup. So it's really not as simple as trying to make that happen. And if you're trying to just pop something in the microwave for a TV dinner, you don't always get that nutrition that you need. The transportation can be difficult. So if driving starts to become a concern, then the driving capacity, again, you're back now then to you're not getting out, you're not getting social, or it's difficult to get to your doctor appointments. And again, reliable transportation can be challenging to find. And then of course, if you've needed medication, trying to trying to make sure that you have the right medication at the right time, at the right dosage, is really difficult because lots of folks that we connect with have lots of different medications. So it can be really challenging to get that dosage just right at the right time. So those are some of the reasons. And so to have that conversation with your loved one, to talk about, really, this is about quality of life, because it can be so, things can become so familiar when you stay in the same place and it just becomes normal. But it's also challenging to have those things that we just went over. So if we're talking about quality of life, are you really able to get out and do those things that you want to do? Or have some of these things maybe fallen away? Like perhaps there's book clubs or social clubs or churches that you aren't able to really make it to as much as you used to or as much as you'd like. And perhaps it might be a little bit easier to have those connections in a setting where it's more convenient for you. Some of those topics, and also getting enough physical exercise and what can really impede that. And so it's very difficult for me to get on an exercise program if I don't have a buddy saying, come on, Erica, let's do this together. So sometimes having that accountability can be really helpful too. And really in your home, it doesn't take many steps in my home to get from the kitchen to the living room to the bathroom. So if you're really in that sedentary lifestyle, that mobility starts to become challenged. So there's some topics to talk about, what things are keeping you busy, and really what that could look like. And is your entertainment coming in the form of the TV alone, or are there more things to help keep you occupied? Some of those household challenges. So the things that can really prove to be difficult. So some of these errands that need to happen, the grocery shopping and different things, again, that can be difficult to stay on top of and keep that going. And we've talked about some of those maintenance and housekeeping projects. Maybe there's some projects around the house that you just really cannot get to. And it seems from myself, for one, I've got a gutter issue. So it's just like, oh, I just have one small gutter issue. It kind of needs some attention. Do I call for that? Try to find that one thing. There's just always something that it comes to with the house. So having the opportunity to do that. Some of the challenges to hire that help out and this lawn and snow removal. So again, trying to find that reliable person. And if you're needing to get out for a doctor appointment, but you're waiting for someone to come shovel the sidewalk or, to be able to get out of the driveway safely, can be a challenge. And then the grocery and cooking and the shopping, we touched on that a little bit about how to prep for that and how to make sure those meals are nutritious and still get the things that you need. So transportation, that can be a challenge when we just kind of talked about the snowy parking lots. Sometimes in a community, they will have some opportunities for transportation to happen where it's door-to-door service. Now, who doesn't like that? So you can have the opportunity to come pick you right up at the door, and then you don't have to navigate the parking lots or any of the ice on the parking lot. So that's a bonus. Clearing the snow from the car, there's things to talk about with your loved one. What about driving in the evening hours? That can be challenging as the eyesight starts to worsen a little bit. It might become a little bit difficult to see and navigate the roads and the lines in the dark. And the mobility, getting in and out of the car. So if you're trying to manage, perhaps if you've got an assistive device with you, you've got a walker, it's difficult to make sure you can get that in the car and also travel with you, because even if you're still driving, that assistance device is difficult to manage along with you. So the next slide. So some of these red flags, so some of those topics to have those discussions with, we've gone over, but these are some red flags that really to make note of, that this isn't necessarily something that you want to point out to your loved one. They might be a little defensive, but some things are to really keep an eye on and to look for. And these are the things that it's really time to start looking for some other options. So if you're noticing some dents or scratches on the car, and they're not mentioning that to you, they might be defensive with that conversation. Or maybe you're noticing the pills are being taken at the wrong time of day, or really finding them on the floor, perhaps, and they're missed medications. If there's difficulty managing the stairs. So I've heard people talk about how they've just become accustomed to what is in their home, and they've had some very interesting stories about how they're managing their laundry and navigating the stairs. So there's some pretty intricate systems I've heard set up for managing laundry. So I don't want to give anybody any ideas, but that's the stairs are meant to be used with your feet, maybe, and so it's difficult to manage those and make sure it's done safely. The basic household tasks, just basic housekeeping and cleaning. If you're noticing some things that maybe aren't kept as much as they used to be, or maybe there's some piles, it's just difficult to cognitively manage those things, and which things do we need to keep and which things do we throw away. It's difficult to navigate that. Sometimes spoiled food in the fridge, if you're noticing that taking place, and that's definitely a safety issue for your loved one. And then what's in the fridge? Are there items to really cook, or is it just things that they're grabbing and snacking on, and having that same meal day in, day out? If there's any incontinence issues or body odors, that's of course some very sensitive issues to have a conversation with someone. But some of those indicators that if they're not able to change their clothes on a daily basis, and maybe not bathing as much, then that's a dignity issue too that could stand for some attention. So with any of those, having conversations and perhaps those red flags, these are some reasons to talk about what you might want to look for before a crisis happens. So you want to see if what options are out there, and get a certain idea of what type of senior living options exist that might be in line best for your loved one, to really get an understanding of what can be provided. So whereas some places, and Amy will get into this a little bit, but some places can offer independent, some places offer assisted, but whereas they're all different senior living communities, they can do things a little differently. They're autonomous, so it can look really different. So it's a good idea to get an understanding of that and know what your budget can allow and the costs of each. And really, this is the sooner you do the research on your own, and you're here being proactive, so kudos to you here, the more you can do that on your own, then you have that freedom of choice, and you're not relying on someone else to make that decision for you. Or really, if we wait until it's too long, then you're really at the mercy of whatever's available, and you've lost that power of choice as well. And so just having an idea that, okay, maybe if I'm really not even ready to go just yet, that's okay. You're going to know what's out there based on what your needs are and what you want your quality of life to look like and what your future to look like. So where LivWell Seniors can assist with that, we are a free service that can help you navigate what that can look like for you. And so we will talk with you with one of our trusted advisors to talk about your wants and your needs and your wishes. And we'll talk about budget. That's a huge piece of the puzzle. And we'll be able to know what things will cost and how long the money can last. And then talk about any physical or cognitive needs, known or risk factors, and really package all that together, again, with that quality of life, so that we can put some next steps in line. And so then we'll talk about putting those resources together for you. So it could look like perhaps, you have not have any power of attorney set up yet. That's something that you might want to do and set up, so we can have those connections. We can tour communities and be able to know which ones might align best with what your needs are. And we go with you and ask some questions that you might not know to ask in relation to what your circumstance is. And then you'll be able to make a well-informed decision, come up with a plan, next steps, so that it's in line with what your needs are, because what your needs are going to be different than someone else's. And so, again, things are not cookie cutter, and you'll be able to have a plan set up that's unique to your needs and still have you be in the driver's seat and have you have choice.
Yeah. So, here in the Quad Cities, we have kind of a wide variety of senior living options available, which is great for people as they're making a decision. So, some of the options that we have would be independent living. Tailored living is kind of unique to Quartet, but I'll talk a little bit about that. Assisted living, memory care, and then there's also short term care and rehabilitation or long term care. And so, a lot of people, when they're kind of in a crisis mode, they're not really clear on what those different levels are and which level might be appropriate for their family members. So it's kind of good to understand those ahead of time too. And not all communities have all of the options, so it's good to get an understanding of what is offered where here in town. So independent living communities typically provide, maybe one meal a day, some housekeeping services, transportation, and activities. So it's really designed for a senior who is still pretty independent, active, but wants a little bit of support to be able to have that help with housekeeping. Maybe they're not driving anymore, but they still want to get out and about and do things. So that would be independent living. But it doesn't provide any care. So down the line, as someone's needs change, then when they need that care, they do have to make a move to a different apartment. But the price point is lower. So that's starting at around $3,000 a month. So here at Quartet, we have an independent living building under construction that is not open yet, but will be open in the spring of 27. So what we have currently is tailored living. So we like I said, that's kind of unique to Quartet. So we have this building that we're in right now is all licensed for assisted living, but we have many residents who are living here who are independent. So they are at a little bit lower price point, but they still have the safety net of being in an assisted living setting. So there's still staff here around the clock. There's that help here. If they were to need it, they can just add it right in. They don't have to move to a different apartment. So sometimes if people are maybe on the verge of independent living or assisted living, that's a really good option because they can be independent for as long as they are able to, but then they can add that care in when they do need it. And sometimes that comes sooner than people are expecting. So it's the idea of being able to age in place without having to make a move. And then assisted living, that is a setting, where we can help with those activities of daily living. So we can help with things like someone getting, in and out of the shower, help getting up and getting dressed for the day. We could do the medication management, help in the restroom, those types of things. So people still have, their own private apartment. It's still a residential setting, but there's just help that can come in with those few things that they might need. And it's really going to be tailored to each individual, what they need help with. So like I said, you have your own apartment, so it is still, they still have that privacy. It's different than having like an in-home caregiver who, has maybe a minimum number of hours that they have to spend. So they're hanging out in your home, in your space for 2 hours, even if you only need help for 15 minutes. In an assisted living setting, they're going to come in, help with what you need help with, and then they're going to get out of your space, so you do have a little bit more privacy. And also, we're going to allow residents to do as much for themselves as they can, because if you don't use it, you lose it, right? So if someone is able to, for the most part, get themselves dressed, but they need help with socks and shoes, we're going to let them do that on their own, and we're just going to help with those socks and shoes. So they're still continuing to do what they are able to do and keep their independence a little bit longer. And then the price range for that is usually in the neighborhood of $4,000 to $6,000 a month, depending on the amount of care needed. Assisted living can also be a good setting for someone with a dementia diagnosis. Doesn't always mean that someone needs to be in memory care. Sometimes early in those stages, someone does really well in just an assisted living setting, just having a little bit of support, a little help coming in, that socialization to kind of slow down the cognitive decline. And also someone moving to an assisted living facility or community before the disease progresses too far, they're able to do quite well and be successful in assisted living. Maybe they won't ever need a memory care setting, but if they do, it's here in the same building. And so again, you're still at that $4,000 to $6,000 price range. And then when we look at memory care, then we're talking about like a locked, secure environment for someone, so that if there's a concern about wandering or exit seeking, we have a safe environment. We have a higher staff to resident ratio. So sometimes you see a lot of agitation or anxiety that comes along with a dementia. And so just a little bit more interaction with the staff can kind of help somebody ease that anxiety or agitation. Like our community here, many of the memory care communities in town have a secure courtyard, so we can still get that outside activity, fresh air, sunshine, in a safe environment. And then activities that are really specific for people living with dementia. So things that are going to keep people engaged, maybe some music therapy, pet therapy, exercise classes, things are going to keep people engaged, but meet them at the level that they're at. So it's not going to be an activity that could be frustrating for them, like a complicated arts and crafts that maybe we would do in an assisted living or independent living setting. It's going to be some, things that are really tailored for where they're at in their disease progression. And then the price point for memory care is starting at around $8,000 a month. So when we're looking at like a short-term or rehabilitation stay, these are a short-term stay really in a nursing home setting, but on a short-term basis. So sometimes if someone has a hospital stay or they have a surgery following a fall, something like that, they need a little bit more time to get their strength back. So this is something that is typically covered by Medicare, at least for a certain number of days, dictated by insurance, right? Give you some more intensive physical therapy to get their strength back. It's amazing how weak people can get even with a short hospital stay. So that's where a short-term rehabilitation stay can help. And then following that skilled stay, maybe they're back up to par, they're able to return home. Or, sometimes a respite stay in an assisted living setting is kind of that next step. So 30 days or so in an assisted living setting, and then they can return back home. Or maybe that's a time for a family to look at, whether the individual was really successful at home before this happened. What caused the hospital stay? Was it a fall? Was it a mismanagement of medications? Maybe home isn't the best setting for this individual anymore. Long-term care is kind of what everybody knows as a nursing home level of care. So that's really a healthcare facility for progressive or chronic health conditions. So, this is when somebody is not really going to be getting better, right? So kind of a nursing home setting is where they need to be. It's not a residential setting. It is a little bit more, similar to a hospital as far as the space. But is going to be a higher level of care if somebody needs that. So one indicator is if it requires two people to assist someone, for example, in and out of the restroom, it requires the help of two people. That we can't do that in assisted living. That is going to be nursing home level of care. Or if they need, special equipment to lift the person, that is equipment that they have in a nursing home that we are not, with our regulations, able to use here in assisted living. The goal is different, right? So in assisted living, we are really trying to keep people as independent as possible for as long as we can. And a nursing home is going to be managing a chronic or progressive health condition. And for that reason, the price point is quite a bit higher, $10,000 to $12,000 a month. So here at Quartet, like I mentioned, we have our tailored living, assisted living, and memory care available here in this building. And then coming soon-ish, we'll have our independent living building in the spring of 27. But, we offer the restaurant-style dining. It's all 3 meals a day are included for our residents. We also provide transportation so we can get our residents to their doctor's appointments. We also do outings. We'll go out on shopping trips. We'll go out and about in the community. We do have in-house physical therapy provided by Cimbria Therapy. So they provide physical, speech, and occupational. That's right here in the building. So a lot of people can benefit from that right when they first move in, kind of get their strength up to do a little bit more walking here in a building like this than they might have been doing at home, like Erica was saying, where you're in a very small, maybe kitchen, living room, bathroom, bedroom, a small space, not doing a lot of walking. So right when someone moves in, a lot of times they can benefit from that physical therapy. And then the life enrichment programming. So we offer all kinds of activities for our residents to keep people active and engaged. And that's, as much or as little as they want to. So there's different, obviously, games, fitness classes, live music that comes in, just a lot of opportunities to socialize. And that's up to the individual's choice. We have people that want to participate in every activity that we have, and other people want to sit in their apartment and watch TV, and that's okay too. It's really based on choice. But you are still getting that daily interaction, at least by going down to your meals throughout the day, going to check your mailbox. You're still going to be chatting with people all throughout the day, even if you're not somebody who's loves the idea of going to play bingo. Obviously, a carefree lifestyle. We're taking care of all the housekeeping and the laundry for our residents. And it is fun to see residents explore even new interests sometimes. Maybe they want to start getting into some arts and crafts that they hadn't done before. We have our little miniature golf outside. We have outdoor walking paths or movie theater. We show movies in here several times throughout the week. So there's just a lot of options and a lot of opportunities for that socialization, which, like we talked about, does help reduce any cognitive decline doing that socialization.